that healthcare costs are the single greatest threat to the American businessman.
Wow.
And that's the reason why businesses are struggling, according to him. So he came together with these guys to build something better. They couldn't do it, right? Partly why they couldn't do it is because they went and hired all these medical experts who were the wrong people to hire because they don't have the knowledge these guys are seeking. How do you change the problem? You don't go to the people that are part of the problem.
All right, guys, Digital Social Hour. We got Kashif Khan here today. Thanks for coming on, man.
Pleasure, man. Good to be here.
Yeah, you've been blowing up on social media.
I'm trying, man. It wasn't intentional. I was so frustrated about what I was seeing with our patients and clients that I started talking about it just authentically, and everyone's like, that's exactly what we need to know. And now they want to know more. So it was literally unintentional, but there's purpose behind it.
What were some common things you were seeing with the patients?
So we look at health at a personalized lens. So all of this one size fits all, trial and error, our allopathic system, which we already know, the sick care system, everybody talks about it. I just had a unique lens into why diseases actually happen because I had the DNA samples of many thousands of people that were sick. So I spent 3 years with 7,000 patients in front of them working on their health concerns with their DNA. So I was able to figure out root cause, what were the actual biological failures that led to eventually this symptom that was given a name and a medication. But if you dig deeper, there's something going on that's a functional level that you could address that doesn't necessarily need to lead to a disease. It's just a system optimization question.
So you're studying the DNA. Is that from blood tests?
It's saliva. You spit in a tube and you can figure it out. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you'd recommend people take a saliva test?
Yeah, I recommend. So if DNA is a human instruction manual, so you have 50 trillion cells that make up this human form. Every single one has DNA in it. The cell is reading the DNA like an instruction manual to know how to do its jobs. From making hormones to detoxifying chemicals to how you think. You know, if I have your DNA, I know your personality without ever talking to you because we know the neurochemicals. So imagine there's an instruction manual for something as complex as the human body and we don't read it, you know? And so why not? So that's step one to any health and wellness or optimization journey.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, people recommend to get blood tests, but I rarely hear DNA tests.
Yeah, and so I would say here's a big deal with DNA. It was not understood what information to glean from it. Meaning, if I go talk to someone on the street about, hey, do you want me to sequence your DNA? Like, I don't want to know if I'm getting Alzheimer's. I don't want to know if I'm getting breast cancer. The anxiety alone will make me sick.
Right.
Versus, what if I can tell you why you would get Alzheimer's? And you can now take a detour and avoid it, like a GPS, right? People don't know that that's possible. And it wasn't possible. If you went back 4 or 5 years ago, it was, here's a disease risk for Alzheimer's, here's the disease risk for genetics, of breast cancer. And I can break those down and explain. We just know so much more and it's so much more actionable.
Yeah, I did take the 23andMe test.
Yeah.
And it said I had an increased risk of Alzheimer's and hearing loss.
Yeah. So here's a perfect example. So in our research, one of the things I did was I work with Marvel Studios, right? So they're making all these superhero movies. And one of my jobs was I work with the personal trainers to make sure that they had supplementation that gave them best recovery, best sleep, best everything they needed based on the DNA. So each bottle was custom made for each star, right? And this was an experiment we did with some trainers in LA and it worked out well. So one of the things that happened was I got a call from some producer saying that Chris Hemsworth is going to be filming a show called Limitless, which everyone has now seen, right? And we agreed to do a genetic episode around we didn't know what we were going to find. It was just meant to be an episode. Then lockdowns happened. Production got halted. Chris was stuck in Australia. And he decided just to pick up a camera with his local friends and shoot it, which is what you now see online, right? So there was an episode where he was told, you have the Alzheimer's gene, which is the same gene you were told about.
Yeah.
ApoE gene. There's a certain version which is low risk, certain version which is 8 to 10 times risk, certain version which is 17 to 25 times risk. And the doctor that told him that didn't explain why, right? So now I emailed the producer saying, this is nonsense. Let me actually help this guy because you've just given him the stress that will cause the brain inflammation that will
That's
cause
how I felt.
Yeah. So what's the why? ApoE, the gene, is responsible to instruct the transport of lipids, cholesterol. So when cholesterol is moving around your body for good reason, your body uses cholesterol to fight inflammation. If you have inflammation in your brain, the ApoE gene tells your body to send cholesterol there to fix it. It's a beneficial hormone. But if you have a bad version of the ApoE gene, some gets left behind because the instruction is poor. The transport is not happening properly, which means you're much more likely to develop an amyloid plaque in your brain, that plaque of cholesterol that starts to choke at the brain cells, cause brain cell death, which eventually leads to symptoms that we call Alzheimer's.
Interesting.
So the real question is,
Shout out to today's sponsor, Specialized Recruiting Group. When your company has a position to fill, are you really seeing the best candidates? Sure, you get plenty of resumes, but you may be missing an untapped resource. Ideal candidates who are not currently job searching. People who are not actively looking, but who may be open to the right opportunity. It could be the difference between a good hire and a great hire. Specialized Recruiting Group is ready to find the talent you need. Go to srgpros.com, see how our recruitment specialists with a deep understanding of experience and expertise you need can find the right fit for your business. After all, you deserve to see the best candidates possible, both active and passive. Whether you're looking for a contract or a direct hire, Specialized Recruiting Group is ready to find the talent you need. So go to srgpros.com right now to get started. That's srgpros.com. Specialized Recruiting Group, a tailored approach to hiring.
Why did I have inflammation in my brain to begin with? The ApoE gene doesn't matter if there was no fire to put out. And that's the question we don't ask. Why would I have inflammation in my brain? Leaky gut. Leaky gut equals leaky brain. Stress and anxiety, elevated cortisol levels. Metabolic dysfunction, eating donuts for lunch every day and being distressed metabolically. Hormones, this is why 80% of dementia cases are in women. Because women make toxic estrogens that cause brain inflammation.
Wow, I didn't know 80% were in women.
Yeah.
Holy
Same
crap.
thing with autoimmunity. 80% of autoimmune cases are women because they have a whole other struggle with hormone metabolites that cause inflammation that we don't have to necessarily deal with.
Wow.
You know, and so you can get into so genetics should have been, here's the priority, now let's go figure out why and stop it. As opposed to, here's your propensity, now go wait and see, and a doctor will give you a medicine.
Right. That's fascinating because when I think of all these autoimmune cases I see on social media, it's almost always a female.
Yeah.
And no one's asking why.
Yeah. And we know that this is why I spent 3 years with 7,000 people to figure out the why for each problem. And I think we have that all figured out now.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you're getting to the root cause, basically.
Straight to the root. And this is why when someone comes to me saying, I have ALS, I have Lyme disease, I have whatever, like, yes, you feel that way and a doctor's diagnosed it. Let's figure out what started 7 years ago that eventually led to the way you feel. Why do 3 different people with Lyme disease, one can't get out of bed, one has a flu, one doesn't even know they have it? Same bacteria, same tick.
Right.
Why 3 different outcomes? The way you process it genetically is differently. That's what you need to know.
And have you been able to see people kind of reverse or
Oh yeah,
subsidize symptoms?
I'm working with this lady in Toronto where I'm from who has ALS. Well, told she has ALS, and so this slow degradation, can't walk. Her husband had to carry her up the stairs to go to bed. And I looked at her detox pathways to understand why is there this significant inflammation causing neural inflammation, or she's neurally not functional. And what I found was there's a process called glucuronidation that your body uses to remove mold. And she's missing that gene. It's not even about what version, it doesn't even have the gene.
Wow.
Missing from her genetic code. So I started to investigate mold. And I found that she was loaded with mycotoxins and mold, which caused the same neural inflammatory outcome as ALS. So yes, the doctor's correct. This looks like ALS, but she's medicated for something she doesn't even have.
Holy
So
crap.
a few weeks into dealing with the mold, she's walking up the stairs again by herself.
No way.
Yeah.
I have heard sometimes ALS is a mold parasite thing.
Yeah. And so the correlation of why and how do we get there, medically, yes, it's not correct. And they're correct in what they say. But also people that fix their mold and their Lyme say that I got better, I don't have ALS anymore. Because you never had it to begin with. You were misdiagnosed.
And mold is pretty common these days, I feel like.
Oh yeah, 30% of American homes have mold now.
Whoa.
But a bigger source of mold is not just the homes, it's the food stuff. So the coffee, the grains that are being shipped in containers. You can assume that if you're drinking a non-organic coffee, there's a 25% chance you're drinking mold.
What?
Yeah.
Is that high?
Yeah.
Damn. I got to find organic coffee because I drink the pods, so those probably have mold in it.
Mold in them for sure. In fact, if it's not caffeinated, which a lot of people are doing now, mold actually uses caffeine as a defense against the mold. Coffee uses caffeine as a defense against the mold. So decaffeinated coffee is even worse. It's almost guaranteed you're drinking mold. Yeah.
So with huge coffee companies like Starbucks, do they have quality control for this?
They can't, right? So their quality control is around flavor and cost. They want to make sure this is why Starbucks is slightly burnt, because they know it's easier to have a slightly burnt bitter coffee than a well-performing coffee. It's easier it's easier to be consistent about that. They're not even looking at this stuff. You just assume if you're drinking Starbucks, 1 in 4 cups you're getting mold.
Holy crap. At what point are they liable for that though?
They're not, because they're not selling you mold. They're selling you coffee that came through a sort of a logistic system of needing to be shipped from other places, and it happens in the container. They didn't cause it. So even when you measure it at the source, there's no mold. It now goes into a dark, damp container on a boat, and the mold develops. That's what happens.
They're on the boat for months, right?
Yeah.
And you're saying grains have mold in them?
Grains, yeah, for sure. Yeah. So if you open a package of bread, you're getting mold. You're getting some level of alcohol because of it's been sort of fermenting in that. You're also getting chemicals that were designed to kill rats in a grain silo that you're now eating, right? And you can assume that you're eating rats. And if you're eating the coffee, by the way, drinking coffee, the puck that's pre-ground.
Yeah.
So when the pre-ground coffee is processed, there's cockroaches and all sorts of insects that are in the coffee on the site of the production, which is somewhere in South America, for example.
Oh my
right?
gosh.
That pre-ground stuff is ground on that site, and the cockroaches are ground right into it. And why do I know this? Because I'm finding in my practice that the same people that have allergies to lobsters and seafood are now allergic to their coffee.
Wow.
Because the same exact protein that causes the seafood allergen is found in cockroaches.
They are similar, right? They call them the cockroaches of the sea.
Yeah, the outer shell has the same protein. And so people are getting that allergic reaction. They can't understand, why do I feel so horrible? It's because they're drinking cockroach juice.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
Have you seen, because this is what I've seen at least, a lot of people have allergies these days.
Yeah.
Why is that?
So there's not one single reason. There's many. First of all, we do have an innate detox system and an innate anti-inflammatory system. We should be able to cope with environmental threats. When you overload the bucket, then you're at this threshold where the very next thing will cause me to cross the tipping point. I used to have horrible allergies. I used to have allergies so bad that my ear would disconnect from my head. It would be like cut and bleeding.
What?
Yeah. Horrible seasonal allergies. Couldn't see during the spring season up in Toronto where I live. I don't have them anymore. Not because I cured allergies, but because I brought my histamine and inflammatory levels way down where I can now tolerate that thing that supposedly creates an allergy response.
Interesting. So you could kind of, because a lot of people have seasonal allergies, food allergies, you can kind of build up a tolerance to.
Yeah. So everybody is allergic to everything, right? Your body's reacting to everything. How many things are you trying to react to at once? And how much mitochondrial energy do you actually have to deal with all of those things? It's a bit of an energy equation, right? So you got to balance that equation.
And it sounds like a key there is reducing inflammation.
Inflammation and the threat. So you walk into a room, there's a study that just came out from this Belgium university saying that indoor air quality of American homes is now 4 to 5 times worse than outdoor air quality.
What?
It's better to be outside breathing pollution than being in your home.
Why?
Because between your soap, your shampoo, your dry cleaning, the candles, all the fragrances and toxic chemicals you're breathing that are trapped in a drywall box that doesn't breathe, right? So if that's the reality you're in and you keep adding more stuff and more personal care products, then yeah, your body was not designed for that reality. You were designed to live in a cave, right? And fast forward to how we live today, we have not evolved as humanity. Our genes have not changed for 250,000 years. What's changed is our environment, our nutrition, and our lifestyle. We're not designed for it.
And you see the lifespan dropping.
We see, first time ever, American life expectancy dropped by 3 years. There should have been everybody should have been screaming 3 years in 1 year. If it dropped by a few months earlier, that would have been a red flag. But we know there's certain things that we have to point to in terms of why it dropped. And the data is really skewed. And this is the big problem and why no one's talking about it. It's not that people aren't living as long, it's that too many young people are dying. So younger people are dying, which is causing that data to skew, which now we have a 3-year lower life expectancy.
This week alone, there was Matumbo, brain cancer. There was a big, Pete Rose died yesterday. It seems like every week someone's dying. It's crazy. Yeah,
it is crazy. So you have an overload of environmental toxins. You have other things we can also talk about that are creating an inflammatory state in the body, and those two things don't add up too well.
Yeah, we're being attacked from all angles.
Yeah.
And I think if it was just one attack, we could deal with it, but it's just so many.
Overwhelming.
Like it's the light, the 5G, the food, the air, the water. It's almost everything we touch on a daily basis.
Yeah. So EMF, just like you mentioned, you're now living in a ubiquitous, you can't go anywhere without being hit with EMF, right? So EMF is the literal modern day secondhand smoke. And you take the data on this stuff, so it's deemed safe, right? The regulatory bodies say this stuff is safe. The last time they researched a cell phone was in the 1980s.
Wow.
But that's the same safety data we're relying on to tell us that cell phones are safe, which was not 5G, right? And it was, remember the brick, right? Now we have a supercomputer in our pocket that signals a cell phone tower 900 times per minute, 15 times per second. It's not the same context that we're calling safe. The safety data on cell phones was done on military men that had a minimum height requirement, I think, of 6'4", right? And so their skulls are 4 times the thickness of an average child.
Wow.
Double the thickness of an average female. So the context, again, doesn't fit, right? And you also have, again, you've gone from 0G to 5G. The outcome is, it's an entirely different context. We have to redo this whole safety regulatory landscape. It doesn't make any sense.
Have you seen 5G affect people on a DNA level?
Yeah, so what we're seeing is, so the EMF, why it's dangerous, because the wave enters your body and it gets stuck. So it gets stuck in your cells and causes that lingering inflammation. And your body doesn't know how to detox it. Right? It doesn't recognize it as a chemical, a food. It doesn't know what this wave is. And so that stuck context means inflamed cell, which means everything else it's trying to deal with, it also can't deal with. So in terms of DNA damage, the EMF itself, and this is where, studies, it's hard to get the truth from studies, because a study will tell you EMF doesn't damage your DNA. But if you're overwhelmed with EMF and your body's struggling with that, then the other environmental toxins that we know do damage your DNA have an open an open field to just go attack, because you're already struggling with that.
Right, you're distracted.
Right? Yeah, so all of these studies are siloed and not taking the practical reality of how do we actually live? All of what we're dealing with, not just this one siloed separate thing. Yeah, you can prove that to be safe, but put it in the reality we live in, it's not going to add up well.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Is it true the PEMF mats and grounding help with offsetting sort of the damage?
PEMF is the opposite. In as much as EMF gets stuck, PEMF passes straight through. So it's one of the best things you can do to mitigate. You also get an EMF neutralizing device in your home. You can just plug it in the wall. Your Wi-Fi, everything will still work. It just turns the wave into a form that passes through your body as opposed to getting stuck.
Wow.
Yeah, you can even get that. Yeah, you can get literal pendants that you can wear. So when I flew over here, I wear a pendant that helps me not deal with the EMF on the plane.
Wow.
So that's one thing. It's like a must-do now. What used to be like a woo-woo luxury is now like you need it.
I need to get those, because at the airport the other day, they made me go through the scanner where you have to put your hands up. I was like, I know I'm getting fried in this.
Yeah.
But then I asked guys like Brian Johnson on the podcast, does that harm you? And he says no.
No, well, it does. There's data now. So again, where do you go for your data, right? And Brian Johnson is, I guess, very risk adverse in how deep he's willing to go, where his data comes from. There's plenty of studies that prove otherwise, right? In fact, I can tell you, I just posted a study on Instagram that said exactly that, that the wave and the radiation is proving to lead. And this was, by the way, where did I find this data? From the CDC.
Wow.
From the Center for Disease Control. They're saying that this stuff will make you sick. But the study is hidden somewhere where no one's ever going to find it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad we could talk about this now, because a year or two ago, I couldn't mention this stuff. I couldn't mention vaccines.
Yeah.
But social media is getting a lot of pressure now, it looks like.
Yeah, there's pressure, because you can't deny it's something that's happening all around you.
Yeah.
Right?
Like you said, the lifespan dropped 3 years in 1 year. That's crazy.
It's
if
insane.
we continue that, that's not good.
Yep. So the U.S. military database is one of the best healthcare tracking databases we've seen. There's, first of all, a lot of people to track, and they have good tracking. So they put out a report, which they sort of buried after it came out, like, well, we realized we shouldn't have told people this.
Yeah.
That military women, and this was about a year ago, we've seen a 400% increase in breast cancer.
Whoa.
In the last 2 years prior to that 1 year ago. So say it's in the last 3 years. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, that was actually a mistake in our data. They had to cover up what they were saying. But that's the truth. And so you're talking about women that are under 40, right? Mostly in their 20s and 30s, 400% increase of breast cancer. What changed? What changed in the year prior to that? Something was added to their body that compromised their immune system.
Right.
That's it. Cancer is a question of immune response and inflammation. Everybody has cancer all the time. Your body is constantly fighting it through your immune response. And if you're overinflamed, that's when it wins, or immune response is suppressed too far down, that's when cancer wins. You have to balance these two things. What happened? Immunocompromisation, and also all of a sudden cancer starts winning.
The rates are alarming. 1 in 2 dogs now have cancer when they die.
That's unbelievable, man.
Yeah. And they're saying in like 10 years that every dog will have cancer.
Yeah.
If we continue this.
And what are they eating, right?
Yeah, that food is so processed.
What are dogs supposed to eat? What are they actually eating? So we used to, the United States, it used to be, in the turn of the last century, 1%, less than 1%, in fact, of deaths were from cancer. It's now 24%.
Holy crap. 1 in 4?
Yeah, 24%. I think it's the number 2 after cardiovascular disease. Again, we have not changed. Humans have not changed. What's changed is if you add 144,000 chemicals to humanity since the 1970s, which is literally what's happened, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah.
Right? Without fortifying our detox responses, etc. We're not designed for where we live.
And then you look at Amish people, not one of them have a mental condition.
Yeah.
No one's getting cancer there.
Autism rates are a fraction of what they are. And so I wrote an article and posted about this about a year ago. If you study the Amish and autism, it's almost non-existent, right? What are they doing differently? In what we're told, so 2 generations ago, 1 in 10,000 kids was diagnosed as autistic. Last generation was 1 in 500. According to the CDC, this generation is 1 in 34.
Jeez.
According to autism advocacy groups, it's 1 in 28. So it's somewhere between 1 in 28 and 1 in 34. It's nowhere near that in the Amish community, in the Mennonite community. Why? Because, again, these kids are the same, right? They're no different if you just drive over the fence to the Amish community. The environment is changed for us. When you have a vaccine schedule of 86 mandatory vaccines required for children in their early ages, which if you add up all the lead, mercury, arsenic that's in there, sorry, not arsenic, lead, mercury, and aluminum, it's far beyond the Environmental Protection Agency's upper limit that's suggested as safe for a child, right? But if you separately study each drug, 1 of 86, each one is safe because each one doesn't have the total load that's not safe. But put them together, you're causing brain damage, literally.
Wow.
You know, and here, let me tell you another thought about this, which is completely, it's so known medically, but the pieces aren't being put together. So nobody's talking about it in terms of what actually causes things. Step 1, vaccination. Some kids are missing a genetic pathway or have missing genes, I should say, in that genetic pathway that help them to remove the heavy metals that were now added from that serum. It's still 1 in 34. It's not 1 in 1, right? So pharmaceutical companies will argue, well, if it caused it, why isn't it 100%? Some kids have bad detox pathways, so they're more prone to these metals causing them damage. Second step, out of 3, some kids don't have a good methylation system, which allows them to remove non-water soluble toxins like metals and also fight the inflammation caused in their brain from the toxin, right? So now you might have 2 problems out of many. Then you call the doctor saying, my kid has a fever. I just got these vaccines. My kid has a fever. Oh, take some Tylenol. The active drug in Tylenol is called acetaminophen, which in order for your body to process it, uses the exact same glutathione pathway that your body is relying on to process the heavy metals.
Wow.
And your body starts to prioritize that. And now all of a sudden, it's the kid who already had bad genes here now has 0 access to their detox response because the Tylenol is taking over to be processed. Perfect storm for someone who ends up with brain inflammation, literal brain damage that ends up needing a label, which is called autism. And we don't have more autism. We have more environmental threats in bodies that were not designed for them.
Right.
Right? So this is the work we do, just researching what's really going on. Why are people so sick?
And you see the average IQ dropping like really fast.
Yeah, really fast. I see it in my own home when I'm dealing with my kids' friends, and they do not remind me of the way I grew up. Right? Yeah, what they need is so different from the way we grew up, right?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's almost like we're just being put in a program these days.
Yeah, it's like, who does the FDA work for? There's 18,000 employees there. What are they doing? You know, like what they're doing is, well, the guys at the top all came from pharma.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, their funding all comes from pharma, right? The FDA, if you have a regulatory entity that's designed to regulate an industry, and that industry pays for the regulatory regulatory entity, what's going to happen, right? If most of the head honchos are recruited from the industry that they're meant to regulate, what's going to happen? Exactly what you see happening.
Is Canada similar? Because FDA is US, right?
It's slightly different insofar as Canada has a government-paid healthcare system. So where I live in Toronto, province, equivalent to a state of Ontario, single payer. The government pays all the bills. So I've been to meetings with our finance minister of our province where, you know, I was like this biotech guy who's supposed to talk about the future of health, and then there's all these pharma CEOs. And I could see that they have the amount of control of the lobby is so much more tight and powerful there than it is even here, because there's only one entity to deal with. The government pays all the bills, as opposed to all these insurance companies, you know, Medicare, Medicaid, etc. And so the noose is so much tighter. You know, I could come with the perfect example or answer to saving them billions of dollars, which I've done. There was a crisis around the autism budget and them needing to know how to save money, and I literally brought them the answer, and it wasn't implemented because it meant people would be on less medication.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And you would have saved them billions?
Literally, well, in terms of the autism budget, millions. In terms of applying this thinking to the entire $68 billion budget, many billions.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
But they didn't see it that way.
They saw it that way, but it could not go past the finance minister I was sitting in front of. I met with him 3 times, and he's like, this is incredible. This will change the world. We can't believe this is the Canadian solution. Did not go past him. Once he tried to bring it to committees and bureaucracy, it just disappeared.
How hopeful are you with RFK? Do you think he'll be able to get anything accomplished?
So, I mean, what they're talking about is purge and replace, right? And that's what you kind of do. I mean, you're dealing with an industry that is, we have a $4.3 trillion healthcare industry. The CDC will admit that 90% of that is spent on chronic disease management.
Wow.
Which means things that we don't need to have, things that are caused. So try and go up against a $3.6 trillion monster. Right?
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah. So yes, I think that there'll be change. Yes, I think there's too much knowledge and awareness where there has to be some change, but I don't think it's going to flip on its head overnight. Anyone that's tried to disrupt, we had Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett, and Jeffrey Diamond, 3 of the most powerful people in this country, come together to build the future of healthcare. Their project went bankrupt.
Which project was that?
They put billions of dollars together several years ago to try and. Warren Buffett is quoted as saying that healthcare costs are the single greatest threat to the American businessman.
Wow.
Right? That's the reason why businesses are struggling, according to him. So he came together with these guys to build something better. They couldn't do it, right? Partly why they couldn't do it is because they went and hired all these medical experts who were the wrong people to hire because they don't have the knowledge these guys are seeking. How do you change the problem? You don't go to the people that are part of the problem. Right? So, but I understand needing the accreditation, et cetera, but we're far beyond that now. We now see that there's more needed. But second is this system, the moat that's around it is so hard to crack, right? You have licensing, you can't do or say anything without losing a license, et cetera. So the front end doctor isn't going to do what you're even asking them to do,
Nope.
right? So anyway, there's work to be done. We're in a better place than we've ever been, but it's still a really uphill battle.
I just found out certain doctors at big companies have prescription quotas.
Oh yeah. It's no secret now the payments that were made around COVID and the payments made around getting someone on a ventilator, prescribing things that didn't need to be prescribed, and it was just partly a manufacturer problem. There's a very real problem. There was a virus, people got sick, right? To what degree did it affect us? That was partly manufactured,
right?
And just like anything else, you have a medical system where the number 3 cause of death in this country is medical error. It's the number 3: cardiovascular disease, cancer, medical error. Imagine that.
Crazy.
The people that are meant to keep you alive, it's the number 3 reason you're going to die. 66% of American personal bankruptcies are due to healthcare costs now.
Wow.
So you work all your life to save this money to spend it on trying to stay alive, right? Because the system is not designed for health. It is designed for masking illness, and it's expensive to get sick and then try and manage it as opposed to not get sick in the first place, which we now know how to do.
Yeah, because if you get a chronic disease, it's probably going to cost 6-7 figures to...
Yeah. In this country, it's not true in other countries. In this country, that's the case.
That's not, and most people cannot afford that. No. I think 80% of people are living paycheck to paycheck in America.
Yeah.
So if they get cancer, I mean, that's tons of money on chemo and everything.
If there's no insurance, what do you do?
And most insurance won't cover the full thing.
Yeah.
So it's tough, man. Feel for these people.
That's where people are selling homes. Why is that number the way it is? 66%.
That's so high.
Because whatever is left between their home, their savings gets spent.
Yeah.
Right.
That's super unfortunate. And medical error being third. So do you see AI kind of stepping in and lowering that number?
So, possible. Is it going to be allowed to happen? Right? Because you have to wonder, this gray area that people get stuck in, the profitability of needing to trial and error 8 different medications before you find the one that actually cuts your anxiety, right? The trial and error of trying to diagnose, misdiagnose, being in the system is profitable, right? So does that problem actually, is there a desire to solve it? You and me, yeah, we don't want that problem. But the industry, does it want the problem solved?
No.
Right?
Crazy.
Yeah.
Man, I don't even know what the fix is because we're in so deep.
The fix is what you see happening is an entire separate healthcare system being built outside of the healthcare system, where people now realizing that their insurance is not insurance. Their insurance doesn't pay their bills when they need a payment. Their payment is still coming out of their pocket, right? It is just an administration of their healthcare costs. That's what it is. And so people, well, if I'm going to pay cash anyway, I might as well go to that functional medicine doctor. I might as well go to that naturopath. I might as well take the supplements. I might as well go get some red light therapy and stay healthy. And now spend my money now as opposed to waiting to burn it all when I get sick later. And you're seeing that now. So when that starts to happen, it's going to get interwoven. You already have one of the biggest functional supplement companies, which all the functional medicine doctors use, called Designs for Health, got a major investment by a pharmaceutical company. You already have Pure Encapsulations, another major functional supplement company like therapeutic grade, got invested in by Nestle, right? So these guys are already saying that this is where things are going. We have to either be part of it or lose from it, because people will vote with their wallets.
Right. And I'm hearing that certain supplements actually are bad for you because they have heavy metals in them.
Yeah, so this is why brand is very important, and also digging deep into your DNA to know what you actually need. As an example, I deal with a lot of people that they'll go get a test and they'll have heavy metal, some kind of toxic burden that makes them sick, right? And so the glutathione pathway is the pathway that your body uses to remove some of those things. It's a powerful antioxidant. So a typical naturopath functional medicine doctor will say, hey, go get a glutathione IV, right? Let's pull those toxins out. You don't make enough yourself, let's pull it out. If you're missing the GSTT1 gene, which many people are, which is the key instruction driving how your body uses that glutathione, then not only is it going to bind onto those minerals, the toxins you're trying to pull out, but also the minerals and nutrients you need.
Wow.
And I've seen people get bedridden with something that logically makes sense, and then the answer is maybe they need more, right? They're so sick they need more, and they get even more sick. So all I'm saying is most supplements are kind of harmless, right? But when you get into the therapeutic grade stuff, you do have to be very careful about what you're doing and work with someone that knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right? Because you can very easily hurt yourself. It's not just, hey, if I take too much vitamin C, I'm going to pee it out. It goes far beyond that.
There's a couple viral videos I wanted to talk about that you had.
Yeah.
One video you said chicken is not the same as it used to be.
Yeah. So if you go back a couple generations ago, a chicken used to be a pound. Now they're 4 on average. Sorry, I should say kilo. They've now gone up to 4 kilos. So they've quadrupled in size, right? They have not genetically changed. We have changed them, right? A chicken, which used to be an organic, high-quality source of protein, now is full of something called linoleic acid, which is an omega-6, which will make you sick, right? And we're seeing this direct line between this massive increase in industrial poultry and people getting chronic diseases that are inflammatory-based, right? So yes, a chicken is not a chicken anymore. It is now a Frankenstein that is completely changed, right? It's not what you think. Go to a regenerative, pasture-raised, organic chicken farm and see how small that animal is and see how gamey it tastes. It is not the same thing, right? That's what it was supposed to be, and that's what it used to be. We've changed it for mass and volume. So food production is about 3 things. How do I make it cheaper? How do I increase the shelf life? And how do I make it addictive? That's what food processing is about. It's not about how do I make it healthy for you.
Yeah.
And that's what happened to chickens.
You're spot on. I go to Costco now. I can't even buy those chickens anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, they're so big. It's just fake.
Yeah. It is literally fake food. It's not what it was. It's not a chicken anymore. Let's just say that, right?
You also made a video on cooking with aluminum foil.
Yeah. So not only aluminum, but parchment paper and all these things that we're using, that we have this assumption that you go to a store, if it's on the shelf, it's safe. Who said that it's safe? Who proved that it's safe, right? So when you're using these metals, you're having some of them leach back into your food and you're eating them, you're consuming them. Heavy metals are an epidemic now, right? Your body will take heavy metals and store it in your bone. In order to protect you, it wants to protect your organs and protect your vasculature, your veins. And you wonder why all these post-menopausal women that are now getting into bone density loss because they're in menopause are starting to get heavy metal toxicity. Like, I didn't get exposed to heavy metal. No, it's the accumulation of a lifetime of heavy metals in your bone that now, because of your bone density loss, you're releasing. And so they have this symptom of heavy metal toxicity. So anyway, so it's the metals, it's the parchment paper, it's the plastics, it's the plastic in the microwave, the millions and millions of nanoparticles that get released into your food every time you put it in. It's your Teflon coated frying pan, one single scratch, millions again of nanoparticles of plastics in your food, all carcinogenic.
Right.
All. And you wonder why we went from less than 1% cancer deaths to 24% cancer deaths.
And you're seeing an increase in breast implants, and there's a lot of side effects of those, right?
Yeah. So I remember going back, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, I was talking about breast implant illness, and there's so much pushback about there's no such thing. I said, then tell me why every time that I look at a particular genetic profile that I know can't handle mold and certain biotoxins and inflammation, that woman is struggling, but another woman that has good genes in that profile isn't struggling with their implants. So it's not about, again, data and studies are about take this implant and study it, but not in the context of her genetic profile and her genetic profile, which are different, right?
Right.
Then we explant and remove the implant, and all of a sudden she's feeling better. All of a sudden the symptoms are going away. This autoimmunity that she thought she had, this fatigue that she thought she had is going away. So I participated in what I think is the world's largest breast implant illness study. There's a gentleman out of Austin, Texas, named Dr. Robert Whitfield, who runs a plastic surgery clinic where he's been explanting, and we've genetically sequenced hundreds of women. He's also genetically sequenced the actual explant itself, the mold, the biotoxins, all the flora of different fungal activity, to understand what's actually going on when you remove it. It is disgusting.
Wow.
If you look at what's actually going on in these implants, it is truly disgusting. So we now have the data, which we're going to bring. He's spoken in front of the Senate, and we're now going to bring the data forward to finally prove what women already know is the way they feel.
Yeah, that's so important because there's a lot of women that feel like they need to get that to look better, but they don't know the consequence.
They don't know, yeah. And that's the thing, is that not everyone gets a consequence. So women are told, that can't be this because I feel fine. Something else is going on with you. Understanding your DNA first to know how you're wired, you'll know if you can do it or not.
Right. Yeah, because it's not the actual, like, what do they use, plastic?
Silicone, yeah.
But it's not that. It just opens up your body to be attacked.
Yeah, your body attacks it. It builds a capsule around it. So when you remove the explant, there's this literal flesh capsule around it, which your body is covered it because it thinks it's a threat. And that traps in all these molds and chemicals and, mold and biotoxins. But we're also finding that the silicone itself is leaching. So,
wow.
I have to, when women ask me, should I go in red light sauna? This is a big question we get all. Oh, I hear sauna. Sauna's great. So I say, yes, use the sauna, but don't use red light. They say, why? I say, because you have implants. Why does that matter? Silicone melts at 250 degrees. A red light sauna versus traditional. The traditional sauna is surface level. It doesn't go subcutaneous into the tissue. This is why it's more stressful, because it hits the surface of your skin. The red light sauna goes deep into your tissue, which means these implants that are so close to the surface, it's going into the implants, melting the silicone.
Wow.
Yeah, so I tell women, if you have implants, stay out of the red light sauna. Go traditional.
I never even thought about that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
You also made a video about sparkling water.
Yeah. We're finding, once again...
This isn't sparkling, but this is glass.
Yeah. So the glass bottle, great, right? We're finding, once again, that... So there's two things I can tell you about water. One that was in the video and one that I haven't said yet. So, yes, we're now finding that some of the big brands that we know and trust, heavy metals, radiation, all sorts of stuff going on, right? Second thing I can tell you, that we are genetically designed to live in our local jurisdiction, which means from the sunlight to the air to the plant flora to the fungal flora, mold, etc. We're designed to live symbiotically with our environment, which means even the water of your local jurisdiction has the frequency and mineral content to help you thrive in that jurisdiction.
Wow.
So now all of a sudden you're importing Perrier from France and drinking water with a different frequency and a different mineral content that is not designed to support you for where you live. Right? We were not designed for that. We are designed. This is why you can't even mix different fruits. If you take a banana and you mix it with a blueberry in a smoothie, it voids the nutrients of that blueberry.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Where did people ever live where tropical fruit grew in the same place as bush fruit, or apples grew with pineapples? Doesn't happen.
Wow.
Right? So these fruits were not meant to be combined. So just think about that. I'm going to give you the example, not to tell you specifically about bananas and blueberries, but just to start thinking about where do you live, what's natural and local, and how does that help fortify your body for that local jurisdiction, right? And when you start doing that and eating like that, you'll literally feel better.
That's interesting. So try to eat as seasonally as possible.
Seasonally and local.
Wow.
From water to food to everything.
Out here in Vegas, that means they got to give up most fruits then.
Yeah, you're going to start eating cactus, right?
Prickly pears.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know it mattered that much.
Yeah, it matters. Yeah. What is food? Food is therapeutic if it's real, right? Therapeutic for the problems of the local place where the food grows, right? So it's designed to help you thrive there.
Wow, that's good to know. Should people be wearing sunglasses?
So, if you're in an extreme midday sun on a cruise ship in Greece, spend 15 minutes with your sunglasses. The way we use our sunglasses, absolutely not. Your eyes are a detecting, sort of a detector to understand what's going on with the sun, to know then how to fortify your body for that time, whatever time it is. So, when the sunlight hits your eyes, it triggers the production of melanin, which is the thing that then helps your skin not get burnt. So if you cover your eyes with a dim lens, which then changes the sunlight and the signal your eyes are receiving. Remember, your eyes are not a separate organ. They're an extension of your brain. They're literally part of your brain. So your eyes, with your brain, are looking for the sunlight to tell your brain how much melanin to make. And this is why you're seeing burning going up. When your eyes are not used to the sunlight, which you can train your eyes to do, by the way, and you're now used to the sunglasses instead, you will burn more. It's just straight out fact. You will burn more because you're not making enough melanin because you're not getting the signal.
I've also heard if you eat seed oils, you're more likely to burn.
Yeah. There's a study out of Baylor College where they took a bunch of animals and they gave half of those animals a American diet, which meant seed oils, high fructose corn syrup, breads, glyphosates, the typical problems, right? And they gave half of those animals a strictly pasture-raised organic carnivore diet. All they ate was red meat and organs, right? They put them out in the sun. The animals that ate the American diet, 25% developed skin cancer.
Whoa.
The animals that ate the carnivore diet, 0.
Crazy.
0, right? Why? Sun causes skin cancer if your skin's already inflamed from the food that you ate that brought you to the tipping point. If you're fortified and you've been eating the right foods, which means the right amount of melanin, the lowest level of inflammation, your skin is designed to tolerate the sun. Your ancestor did it all the time, right? So there's also a little bit of thinking of these different parts of your body the same way you think about going to the gym. We know you got to train your muscle to get to a certain point. You don't deadlift 400 pounds on day one.
Yeah.
Same thing with your skin and your eyes, and your sunglasses and inflammation. You got to get there slowly.
Yeah.
Right? Retrain your body, all of what you took away from it.
I used to burn all the time.
Yeah.
When I ate like shit.
Yeah.
I never even realized it was diet related. I thought it was just because the marketing on it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
On sunscreen.
Yeah. Sunscreen is another joke, man. I can tell you. So the way sunscreen is designed is there's a UVA ray and a UVB ray, right? So when you look at a sunscreen bottle, you see this UVB protection, right? Because that's what burns you.
Yeah.
Right? And so what you're trying to get protection against is the burn. Meanwhile, so it's designed for, so there's SPF 15, 16, which means sun protection factor, how much time you can actually spend in the sun, right? So now, if you fast forward and say, I bought this SPF 30, which means I can spend 600 minutes in the sun. I now am protected against UVB, which means I'm not going to get burnt, but I'm not protected against UVA. I'm going to get a false sense of security because I'm not burning from the UVB, and the UVA is the ray that goes deep into your tissue and causes cellular and DNA damage, which leads to cancer.
Wow.
So by masking yourself from UVB with the sunscreen, you're overexposing yourself to the UVA because you're not getting the burn signal. Why do we burn? You're supposed to go in the sun to get vitamin D. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes to do that. Your skin will start to tingle and burn to tell you got enough. It's an actual signal that we're meant to listen to. You're starting to burn. You have enough vitamin D. Don't get more because too much vitamin D is also a problem. It will cause plaque in your body, calcification, right? So again, false sense of security and hormone disruptions. I can speak an hour about sunscreen alone, right? But it is a big scam.
Have you seen anything concerning with Botox? Because a lot of people are getting that.
Yeah, we're starting to see that women are experiencing lymph drainage, lymph clogging, I should say. Sorry. So it's a neurotoxin. That's how it works. And we're seeing that there's this clogging that's happening in the lymph system, especially up and around the upper chest. There's some lymphs here and lymphs here. And that's causing what's meant to, this detox process that's meant to protect breast tissue being interrupted. So again, if you study the Botox on its own, it's safe. But practically apply it in the way that people use it, which means it ends up clogging and ends up preventing me from having this lymph drainage, which means inflammation could lead to things like breast cancer. Right? So you have to look at the whole cascade and storyboard of what actually happens in the human body, not the siloed, I added Botox, did anything happen? No. Well, what happened next after that? Your body does something else to it too.
Right. Because you could structure a study to do whatever you want it to do.
You can prove whatever you want. For any study that says anything, there's another study saying the opposite.
Right.
You can prove whatever you want in a study. Right? All you got to figure out is who's paying for the study. Then you know what they're trying to prove, right?
Yeah. So your approach is you take a study, but then you take the full picture.
We apply it to the practical reality. You can't silo little bits. That's not how the body works. That's not how we live, right? I'm sitting in here in a studio with you, a lot of EMF, there's just a different type of light, etc. That's our context right now. So I have to understand you and me in this context, not in a lab where it's isolated with one molecule, and that's not how we live, right? So you have to practically apply things.
Right. That's a good way to approach stuff in general, because people do individual studies on vitamins and all this stuff, but does that even matter? Like,
what else is a person taking? What is their fitness level? How healthy is their gut? There's a gene called CYP1A2, which determines how effectively you actually metabolize supplements. And so some people, I see, like, for example, Dave Asprey walking around with his 120 supplements he takes a day, right? If you have the bad version of the CYP1A2 gene, you're going to overdose and hurt yourself, right? So maybe he's doing well there with that gene. So there's unique nuances that help us personalize everything. And as opposed to, again, jumping to the one size fits all, whatever the next podcaster said, start with personalization. And that ends up helping you remove a lot of stuff that you didn't even need, simplifying things, right?
Have you looked into oral health being linked to the body?
Oh, for sure. So we see right now people using mouthwash, for example, right? And breath fresheners, etc., completely disrupt your oral microbiome. So there's studies that now say that mouthwash use leads to cardiovascular disease.
Wow.
And so the medical world will completely debunk that and say it's not true because, again, they're separating those two things. But if you put them together, what actually happened in the practical reality is that when you take mouthwash, destroy your microbiome of your mouth, this is part of what your body uses to produce nitric oxide, right? If you don't have a proper oral microbiome, that's the first step to nitric oxide production. Nitric oxide is one of the most important nutrients your body needs to maintain cardiovascular health.
Crazy.
Yeah, so this is where the cascade, again, there's a gap in the middle of the nitric oxide, so these two things seem separate, but they're not. There's a bit of a baton pass that happens, and you need to understand the full flow.
I remember growing up, all the dentists recommended take mouthwash. Yeah. They would even give you like free samples.
Number one cause of death is cardiovascular disease. You wonder why?
That's nuts. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I've heard even each tooth is linked to an organ.
Yeah, you can actually map out, so there's somebody I was dealing with who went to an ayahuasca retreat to deal with some trauma. Yeah. Right? And so they came back from the retreat and they said it didn't work. I was like, what happened? They said, I had extreme tooth pain and I had to quit. I said, well, it worked. That's exactly what happened. Every organ in your body is connected to a tooth. And we now have a map that tells us which tooth is pointing which organ. The particular tooth that she had a pain in spoke to vaginal health, right? Which means that she had some sexual trauma in her life.
Wow.
Yeah, which she did have. We talked about it, right? So you can now, so each tooth does point to an organ system. Just like when you look at your iris, there's markers that point to every gland in every organ system. You can detect, there's a whole science called iridology, which in the United States, you're not even allowed to practice. And in hospitals in Hong Kong, they on the deathbed, they use to figure out what's actually going on in this person's body.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's an Eastern principle.
It's also used in Germany. In Germany, you can go to a clinic and a doctor, I think a naturopath will use iridology to, through your iris, detect what's going deep into your organs, which you can't understand because there's no testing to understand. Inflammatory levels, dysfunction, deep before there's sort of blood markers that will show you the same thing.
That is so fascinating. I want to try that out.
Yeah.
So when people get cavities, does that affect the organ too? If it's a cavity on a certain
tooth? It works both ways. It's a bi-directional communication. The tooth is signaling to the organ is signaling to the tooth, right? Wow. So oral health, there's again, we can talk in a whole hour about that, but oral health is directly tied to a lot of chronic diseases, just like your gut is, just like your stress is. Each one of these things need to be dealt with. We need to think of our body as opposed to a bunch of diseases as a bunch of systems. And every system has to be thriving. And if one system is off, it affects another system. They're all interlinked and interconnected. So go through the systems and optimize each one. It's very difficult to have a chronic disease if you're in that state.
Right. I love that. Kashif, I learned a lot, man. This has been incredible. Where can people learn from you, find you, and keep up with you?
I have a daily rant on Instagram where I have something to complain about, So Instagram's probably the best place, Kashif Khan Official. There, I host a weekly masterclass where I talk deeply about how to actually use your DNA to get personalized insights. So I would say just go to my Instagram, link in the bio, sign up for the webinar, and your mind will be blown in terms of what we know.
Perfect. Thanks for coming on, man.
Pleasure, man.
Thanks for watching, guys, as always. See you next time.